Meet our loner MC, Cray, who's supposed to be living the dream in the golden age of treasure hunting, but Cray quickly realized he's more suited for Netflix and chill than loot. Cray and his friends used to talk big, but now he's just here, trying not to die. Basically, he's the definition of a good for nothing, just trying to retire before his body decides to retire on its own. The story begins in a small village. 6 friends dream of becoming treasure hunters. They believe working together will help them achieve their goals quickly. They hope to travel to the capital one day and make a name for themselves. One of them, Cray, talks about the dangers of treasure hunting like facing monsters, but they are determined to succeed and earn rewards. The story shifts to Cray waiting in a long line at a busy casino. Many people, including strong warriors, are there to join warrior teams. One famous group, the First Steps, is recruiting. Cray notices many factions helping each other find strong fighters. However, Cray struggles because his low level makes it hard for him to join any good team. While waiting, a girl named Ruta talks to Cray. She says she's nervous and introduces herself as a third-stage hunter. Cray responds briefly but doesn't seem interested. Ruta keeps talking, saying she came alone and is struggling to reach treasure guarded by wolves. She thinks joining a party might help. Suddenly, a big man interrupts, mocking her for being a beginner and saying the place is for professionals, not amateurs like her. Ruta defends herself, saying she's not a beginner, but the man insists she's too weak and should go home. Ruta challenges him to a match to prove his strength, even drawing her weapon. A clan member stops them, warning that fighting could get them banned from the interviews. Ruta laughs it off, calling it a joke, but Cray feels embarrassed by the situation. Later, Cray and Ruta stand together, and Ruta is amazed by the number of hunters. Cray says it's normal and shares that he's been there 5 times. Ruta apologizes for her earlier behavior, but Cray says it's fine. He explains that famous hunters have great opportunities, while others need talent to stand out. Cray tells Ruta about the teams like the Arc Brave, led by a 7th stage warrior. He says joining them would make her a distinguished hunter. The big man from earlier interrupts again, saying Ruta doesn't know much and explains the area belongs to the First Steps party. Cray adds that the First Steps were founded by his friends who became very famous and strong. The man says it's the first time the First Steps are inviting new members, which is why it's so crowded. Ruta points to some people sitting alone and asks about them. Cray explains to Ruta that the people sitting alone are independent hunters hoping to join parties. Suddenly, a loud young man bursts in, boasting about joining the First Steps party and becoming a great hunter. Ruta notices he's at a higher stage than her. A girl named Tino appears, annoyed by his arrogance, and confronts him, telling him to know his place. A member of the Arc Brave party tries to calm Tino, but she insists she can handle it and claims she deserves a spot in the First Steps. The young man argues back and the tension rises. The big man jokingly suggests a duel, and the crowd clears space for a fight. Cray pulls Ruta back to avoid trouble. As Tino prepares to fight, she notices Cray and stops him, calling him master and apologizing for not recognizing him earlier. Roden greets Cray warmly, revealing that Cray is actually the leader of the First Steps party and had been in disguise to scout new warriors. The crowd is shocked, and Cray reflects on his journey with his team, recalling their early struggles and how they became strong hunters. He remembers nearly dying in a battle and feels he's not as strong as his teammates. He considers leaving the team but is interrupted when his friends suggest he become their leader. Reluctantly, Cray accepts the role and leads them for many years, though he often jokes about wanting to retire. Later, Cray oversleeps and Roden wakes him up, teasing him for being late. Tino defends Cray, scolding Roden. Cray admits he overslept and didn't wear the official uniform. Roden laughs, calling Cray comfort-loving. Tino jokes that Roden might need to be removed from the warrior list, and Cray explains that Tino is strong and trained by his old friend. Roden asks if Cray has found a good warrior for their team, and Cray says his recommendation should be trusted. Tino then mentions she wouldn't mind joining the Arc Brave team if Cray agrees. Meanwhile, Gilbert, the mischievous young man, declares he might join the team if they want him. Tino tries to hit Gilbert, but Cray stops her. Cray notices Gilbert is at level 4 but isn't in a party. Gilbert introduces himself, adding he's not a good person. Cray suggests Roden train him, but the leader hesitates, saying picking warriors is like luck. Cray asks Gilbert what a warrior's most important trait is. When Gilbert struggles, Cray says it's not losing in battle. He jokes he's never lost because he hasn't fought a real war yet. Cray throws a ring into the air, saying whoever catches it will join the Arc Brave team. Gilbert catches it, but Tino knocks it away. Chaos erupts as everyone fights for the ring, destroying furniture. Cray leaves, telling them to keep the ring. Later at home, he hears the restaurant was destroyed. Relieved no one was hurt, he tells his staff to charge repairs to him. He learns the Explorers Association wants to see him. Without his mask, he's unsure about going out, but decides to go. At the association, Roden apologizes for the chaos and offers to pay for damages. The deputy leader, Gark Welter, hands Cray a book with a new job, warning him not to underestimate it. Curious, he accepts the mission and leaves to find Roden. Instead, he meets Tino, who now has the ring. Cray congratulates her and agrees it's her ring. Tino happily claims she's keeping it. Cray asks if Tino is free and she says yes. He mentions a mission for her. She tries to run off for candy but complains the mission's pay is too low and the task too hard for her level. Cray reassures her she won't go alone and promises to form a team to help her. Cray and his old team head to the Explorers Association to register as hunters, but Cray feels nervous and scared. He tries to convince his teammates that he's a burden and should go home, but his friend reassures him, saying he shouldn't think that way. His friend Luke volunteers to go in first, but Liz stops him, saying they agreed not to go in alone. Ignoring her, Luke confidently kicks open the door and announces that he's the best swordsman, introducing himself as Luke. Liz reminds him they're a team, but Luke insists on shining alone. She then introduces the group, explaining they're there to register, but Cry remains anxious. When the staff asks for a team name and emblem, Cry suggests the Sad Souls with a skull emblem. Most of the team dislikes the name, except one person. Feeling like he failed, Cry wants to leave, but his teammates quickly assure him the name is great. The staff checks if everything is fine, and Cry confirms it. Thus, the Sad Souls party is formed. The story shifts to Cray's current team. Greg, a big man, asks if Cry is the leader of the Sad Souls. Cry confirms, and Greg calls him the one with 1,000 tricks. Cry explains the title is for brave, clever warriors. Gilbert, another member, angrily claims Cry can't have the title because he's too strong. Tino warns Gilbert not to underestimate Cray's strength, but Cry humbly denies being the strongest. Gilbert questions Cray's leadership, refusing to follow him. Greg tells Gilbert that Cray is at the 8th level, while Gilbert is at the 4th. Tensions rise. Cry decides Gilbert won't join them and asks Greg instead. Tino hesitates but says she wants Cry to come. Cry declines, promising to find someone else for her mission. Suddenly, Gilbert challenges Cry to a fight, but Cray refuses. Tino steps in, saying Gilbert has disrespected her teacher. She knocks Gilbert down with one punch and demands he respect Cry. Gilbert remembers his past as a powerful team leader but says nothing. Cry asks if Gilbert left his party because he felt weak. Gilbert is surprised and admits it. Cry explains that something similar happened to them, but his friends never abandoned him. In his thoughts, Cry reflects on his friend's loyalty. Gilbert begins to respect Cry, realizing he deeply understands others. Cry looks at Gilbert's sword and calls it weak but with potential. When Cry touches it, flames burst from the blade, something Gilbert has never seen. Surprised, Gilbert realizes this is a trick Cry performed using his magical artifact ring. Dora and Greg are amazed too, and Gilbert starts to believe Cry has extraordinary powers, even wondering if he's a ghost. As Cry learns about their next destination, he finds out it's full of treasures, but guarded by wolves. Over time, hunters scare the wolves away, allowing treasures to be taken. Now the area is full of treasures again, guarded by a fearsome blood-covered wolf. Cry feels anxious and calls the place dangerous. A staff member asks if he sent the team there. Cry explains there are 4 of them, and since the area is at the 3rd level, Tino can handle it. The staff member thanks Cry for helping her learn about Gilbert and his old team. She also asks about the trick Cray did with the sword. Cry explains it was a simple move using his artifact ring, which he loves to use. He then wonders if he could buy Gilbert's sword because he likes ancient artifacts. The staff member seems intrigued by his interest. As Cry thinks about the mission, he worries the wolf might be more dangerous than he first thought. His friend tells him there are rumors of attacks in the area and the ghost there has grown stronger. Cry checks his gear and thanks his friend for recharging his tools. But inside, he's nervous about the dangers his team might face, especially since some wolf party members were killed. Cry realizes the mission involves rescuing people from the 5th level, which is higher than Tino's 4th level. His friends are surprised and worried when he admits this. They are concerned for Tino and the team, but Cray tries to reassure them by saying it's valuable training. Before leaving, he nearly loses his balance from anxiety, but calms himself by recalling Gilbert's bravery. As the team heads to the mission site, Tino jokes about writing her will. She trusts Cry wouldn't send them into danger without a plan. Dora asks if Cry knows the risks, and Tino confidently says he does, explaining that the team's makeup is intentional. Greg is skeptical, but knows Cry has a plan. Meanwhile, Cry feels uneasy about his decision and considers asking for help, but realizes no one is available. He decides to catch up with the team instead. When the large wolf appears, it frightens the group. Tino comments on how the wolf always finds her. Back at the base, Cry retrieves artifact equipment from a safe. A staff member notices his anxiety and asks if he's stealing. Cry reassures her he isn't breaking the law. He then puts on a special mask for fast travel, declines her help, and launches himself into the air toward his team. Cray's team is attacked by a giant wolf in the treasure zone, but they manage to kill it. Tino says they won because they outnumbered it. Greg asks Gilbert why he didn't use the fire in his sword. Gilbert explains that he tried, but it wouldn't light and he doesn't know how to recharge it. Dora suggests they go back, warning they might be in danger if they stay. Greg agrees, saying the people before them are probably dead and they can't bring them back. Tino refuses to leave, saying they haven't reached the treasure zone yet. Greg says their lives are more important than treasure, and they won't survive another wolf fight. Tino says their mission is to save the living, not get treasure, and they need to help the people who came before them. She walks ahead, reminding the group that Cray didn't send them to fail. They reach the treasure zone and find more giant wolves. Greg says these wolves are stronger than the last one. Dora notes that the area is smaller than usual, which might limit the wolves' movement. She suggests they fight in this confined space. Gilbert wants to go in and attack, but Tino questions his decision, asking if he's crazy. She tells him not to rush. Gilbert says his sword is still strong even if it doesn't light up. Tino says she's in charge and not everyone needs to act alone. She says Cray trusts her to keep them alive. Tino plans to have her and Dora draw the wolves' attention while Gilbert and Greg attack from behind. She says they will work as a team, not sacrifice anyone. Meanwhile, Cray is on his way to the team. hoping Tino is still alive. He thinks the others might be sacrificed if needed. The team faces the wolves, and Tino says even though the wolves are more, their teamwork will give them an advantage. She says the wolves might turn on each other because they lack teamwork. More wolves come out of the cave, and Gilbert and Greg get more excited. Tino praises each team member's strength and skills. She says she understands why Cry sent them together. She thanks Cry for his choice. Gilbert thinks about his old team and how they gave up. He remembers leaving them out of frustration. Greg approaches, saying he now understands teamwork and regrets how he treated his old team. They defeat the wolves and enter the cave. Inside, Tino touches the rocks, and Greg asks what's wrong. She says someone is still there, their leader. Greg suggests leaving before the leader kills them. Tino says they can't leave after everything they've been through. She reassures Greg, saying he's strong and should be confident. Greg agrees and says they will earn money for a better life. He remembers being scared in his last battle, but admits he backed down. Tino comforts him, saying being at the top is an achievement. She reminds them that Cry chose each of them for a reason. Dora asks why Cry chose her. Tino jokes it's because of her good looks. Dora gets upset, but Tino laughs it off. She urges them to finish the mission. Meanwhile, Cry is flying toward the cave, but crashes inside because his suit is too fast and has no brakes. The team faces the wolves' leader, who is huge. He attacks them and they quickly run, but Dora and Greg are knocked to the ground. Tino realizes the creature's weak spot is his head and comes up with a plan. She tells Gilbert to block one of the monster's attacks so they can strike. Gilbert blocks the attack, but when Greg strikes, it does no damage. The creature hits Greg and knocks him down. The monster breaks Greg's sword and is about to kill him, but Dora saves him just in time. Tino takes the chance to rush at the creature's head and delivers a killing blow, though the monster injures her leg. She announces they won and starts treating her leg. Greg and Gilbert have a moment, with Greg upset that his sword broke. Gilbert reassures him, saying survival is what matters. Tino gives Greg her sword, and they hear a noise from deeper in the cave. A sharp arrow almost hits Tino, and they see a pack of even bigger wolves. Tino realizes they have no choice but to fight. She quickly makes a plan to move through a narrow passage where the wolves can't reach them. But just before they can leave, a wolf blocks their way. Gilbert and Greg decide to stay behind to hold the wolves off, telling Tino and Dora to run. Dora refuses to leave them. Tino remembers Cry and hopes he has a solution. She recalls the ring Cry gave her and says she promised everyone would return safely. She explains her plan to strike the wolf's eye, asking for their help. The team prepares, but Gilbert charges ahead and gets knocked down. Tino feels guilty for giving him the wrong order. The wolves surround them, and Tino fears it's the end. Suddenly, Cry appears, and Tino is overjoyed. The wolves attack Cry, but he isn't hurt and says he has 17 lives. Cry uses a spell that weakens the wolves but doesn't kill them. He's outnumbered and uses a trick with a bauble to blind the wolves. He tells the team to run, and they escape. Gilbert worries about the wolves catching up, but Dora reassures him that Cry is behind them, slowing the wolves down. Cry mutters that this is his top speed. As they escape, Tino remembers the first time she met Cry when he saved her from a gang. The team makes it out safely, and Gilbert thanks Cry. Cry heals Tino's leg, and she thanks him. Cry says he didn't kill the wolves, but escaping was the best option. The team follows him, though Cry is unsure where to go. Cry remembers his old team, where he used magical tools in battles. His teammates are impressed by his collection and ask how he gets them. Cry says he buys them whenever he has money. Liz reminds him that he promised her a magical tool as a gift. Cry promises to keep his word. Liz tries to hold a tool, but it slips from her grasp. Luke picks up a sword, but Cry warns him that it's cursed. Luke is affected by the sword and tries to attack everyone, but his friend stops him. Back in the present, Cry is leading his new team through the wolves' lair. They are lost in a maze with no way out. Cry wonders why he's leading and feels Tino should be in front. He worries about how to apologize to her. Gilbert is frustrated and says they don't know where they're going. Cry admits he doesn't know how to get out. Tino reassures Gilbert, saying she knows the right path because she studied the map. She believes the exit is through the wolves' leader's chamber. Cry is surprised and mutters that the wolves must be there. Dora wonders when the plan will end. Cry admits he doesn't know and considers retreating. The group stops when they see the team they came to rescue. Tino is relieved and praises Cry, but he downplays it, suggesting they were just lucky. Gilbert and Greg are suspicious, and Gilbert thinks Cry is hiding something. Dora says the rescue team is still exhausted, but Cry pulls out food from his magical bag to help. Tino is amazed by how much food Cry has. Greg talks to the leader of the rescue team, who explains that the fifth party squad wasn't ready for the wolves. The leader says the wolves are led by a huge creature with a skull-shaped head, known as the one that harvests souls. The creature appears, and everyone is terrified. Cry explains that the creature is highly skilled in swordsmanship and could kill even with a wooden sword. He wonders if it's his old friend Luke, but doubts it. He wishes they had waited for Rodin, the arc-brave party leader. The rescue party leader says the creature played with them in battle but won't spare anyone next time. Dora asks Craig what to do next. Cry says the most important thing is to escape and tells everyone to follow Tino. Tino steps forward, ready to leave with her leg fully healed. Cry insists they can't leave anyone behind, even though some of the rescue party members are exhausted. Tino apologizes for forgetting and asks for forgiveness. Cry reassures her, and Tino announces the exit is at the end of the passage. The leader of the rescue party offers to distract the monsters so the others can escape, willing to sacrifice himself for the group's safety. Tino confidently says everyone will make it home as long long as Cry is with them. Cry feels uneasy with the praise, reflecting on Tino's blind trust in him. As they continue, one of the rescued party members volunteers to stay behind and distract the monsters. Suddenly, loud howls are heard and the wolf leader appears. Everyone braces for the final battle. Cry steps in front of Tino, urging the group to step back. Liz unexpectedly appears and kicks the wolf leader. Cry greets her and they talk. Liz asks about the new members and Cray says he's just training them. The team is confused, not knowing who Liz is. Liz feels hurt and asks if they heard of the sad souls. She turns to Tino, asking if she recognizes her, reminding her that she raised her. Tino, terrified, grips Liz's hand tightly. She seems paralyzed with fear, and Gilbert is thrown against the rocks. Liz questions Tino's behavior and scolds her for it. Tino apologizes and is overwhelmed with guilt. Cry intervenes, telling Liz that Tino has fought well and learned to control her emotions. Liz acknowledges this but wants Tino to be more ambitious and willing to face death. Tino, still guilty, apologizes to Cray, who reassures her that everything is fine. The group faces the skull-faced creature and a wolf with a massive gun. Liz steps forward, scolds Tino for failing to kill the creature, and puts on her mask. She easily catches the bullet shot at her and criticizes Tino for her weakness. Liz defeats the large wolf with a powerful kick and fights the skull-faced creature. She teaches Tino to fight without hesitation. Tino struggles, but after the battle, Liz boasts about the sad soul's strength. She asks Tino if she's okay, and Tino nods. Liz embraces Cry and announces her return. Gilbert decides to go back to his original team and apologizes, saying he wants to become as strong as Liz. The group doubts him and Tino comments that he wouldn't be able to, as their masks are made for them. Cry recalls the time he brought them the masks, remembering how much they cherished them. Cry recalls a time when his friend Citri asked him to keep a dangerous bottle she had invented. Citri, one of the smartest and strongest warriors in the Sorrowful Souls team, warned him not to open the bottle as it could destroy the capital. Cry remembers the bottle being empty the last time he used it in the wolf cave and wonders if Citri was joking. He tries not to overthink it. Meanwhile, the new party enters the wolf cave and fights monsters. The male and female warriors leading the party note that the monsters have gotten stronger over the past 2 weeks. They are on a mission from the association to investigate, and the male warrior mentions that the 1,000-trick warrior is investigating from a different direction. Cry wakes up and learns that the association wants a report on what happened in the wolf cave. He asks his assistant to tell Tino to handle it, as she was the leader at the time. The assistant informs him that Tino is in a training session with Liz. Cry decides to check on them and asks the assistant if there are any disturbances in the capital. She says she'll investigate, but Cry reassures her that it's just a casual question. Cry goes to the training room and finds that Tino is being trained by Liz alone. A warrior outside warns him that Liz might harm Tino during training, but Cry enters and sees Tino lying on the ground. Liz says that if Tino has exhausted all her strength, she must die. Cry intervenes, telling Liz to stop. Liz agrees to stop training for the day at Cray's request, but Tino insists she's fine and wants to keep going. Liz agrees to continue. Later, Sten approaches Cry and blames him for how things turned out with Tino. Sten also informs Cray that new monsters have cut off the northern route and a party of knights was wiped out. Cry reflects on how Gark, a smart and trusted leader, should handle the situation. Cry hopes Gark returns soon and decides to buy time until then. Sten warns not to underestimate Cry as he is clever and protects the Sorrowful Souls team. The commander talks with his deputy about strange events happening in the northern region and decides to visit Cray, who might know something important. The deputy informs him that Cray sent a message saying he's too busy to meet. Despite this, the commander goes to Cray's place, believing Cry has important information, especially since Cry recently visited the treasure area, which is unusual for him. Meanwhile, in the capital, high-ranking officials discuss a major issue in the city and mention a girl named Sophia who can help solve it. Cry wakes up from a nightmare where the capital is destroyed because of Citri's invention. He is startled to find Liz in bed with him, having been woken up by his shouting. Cry notes that Liz often sneaks into his bed at night and that her body temperature is always high. Liz asks if Cry is free that day. Cry asks about Tino's training, and Liz explains that Tino will take a break to recover. Cry then asks about Liz's own training, and she says she'll also take a break. Cray suggests they do something together that day, and Liz thanks him, hugging him tightly. The commander arrives at Cray's place and is met by Cray's assistant, who is surprised by the commander's visit. The commander explains that he's here to prevent bigger issues. Cray, accompanied by Liz, greets the commander, but Liz reacts coldly and insists that Cray doesn't have time for him as they're about to explore the city. The commander stands his ground, but Liz takes an aggressive stance, forcing the commander to defend himself. Cray suggests the deputy commander and he go upstairs for a drink. During their conversation, the deputy asks about Cray's visit to the wolf cave, and Cray assures her that nothing unusual was found but offers his team's help. Cray also suggests she seek out Gark for further assistance. Meanwhile, Liz and the commander's confrontation intensifies. Liz taunts the commander about his strength, and the commander loses his temper, trying to overpower her. Cray intervenes and orders them to stop. After the discussion with the deputy, Cray urges the commander to calm down. Liz reminds Cray about their plan to explore the city. A staff member storms in, asking what happened, but Cray and Liz continue their plans. While walking, Liz talks about how the commander's strength has declined. Cray asks about the current strength of the monsters, and Liz confirms they're stronger than before. Cray asks how they compare to the wolf cave leader, and Liz Liz says the new monsters are weaker. Cry then reflects on Citri's bottle and fears the destruction it could cause. He asks Liz what she would do if the capital were destroyed, but she talks about visiting the lakes instead. Liz hands Cry her bag and rushes to a stranger who has been staring at them. Cry confronts the stranger and lets him go, apologizing. Liz admires Cray's forgiving nature, while the stranger walks away, wondering why Cry let him go. The commander meets with the Paladin party, feeling frustrated as Cry continues to apologize for his requests. He orders them to investigate the Wolf Cave to uncover the mysteries there. Meanwhile, Cray and Liz visit a poorer district to check on recent disturbances. Cry wants to stop at a candy store, but when the shopkeeper recognizes them, he locks the door in fear. Liz grows frustrated, but Cray suggests they return later, as most of the candy is likely sold out. That evening, Cray feels frustrated about his unproductive day. Liz teases him, thinking it's because he missed the candy, but Cray admits it's more about worrying for his friend Citri, who is absent. Liz offers to help, but Cray is still uneasy. He mentions needing chemistry information, which only Citri can provide. Liz points out that Citri took all her equipment to the night mansion, meaning she might be gone longer. Cray expresses his frustration, waiting for Citri's return. An employee enters, informing Cray that she has selected members for the Wolf Cave investigation, but Rodden is missing. The investigation party will leave the next day with a research expert. Cray thinks the investigation doesn't concern him, but reassures the employee that the expert's presence will help. Meanwhile, the witches hiding in the district worry that Cray has found their hideout, which is disguised as the candy store. Their leader, Sophia, decides they will go to war with him. One witch worries about facing Cray's level 8 status, but Sophia explains their device doesn't rely on levels, and it's time to test it. Tino notices many horse-drawn carriages and learns they're heading to the Wolf Cave. She is curious about the situation, especially with level 7 warriors involved. She reflects on the need to uncover what's happening in the area. Cry steps out onto his balcony and asks an employee about a planned party, only to learn it's a gathering to prepare for Rodin's absence. Cray wonders who will cover the costs of the large number of warriors. He suggests they could manage with fewer warriors, but the group reacts angrily. He agrees that the financial aspect is manageable, but remains concerned about Citri, who might be trapped in the cave. Liz then asks if she and Tino can join the mission. Cry firmly refuses Liz's request to join the mission, concerned for Tino's safety with Liz in the cave. He tells the warriors to prepare for their mission. The employee asks if Cry will join them, and the warriors express their readiness. Tino confidently believes the monsters won't be a problem for Cry. Cry decides that 2 warriors will lead the group and learns that Sven is already on his way with his team. Cry plans to finish his task before heading to the cave, knowing Sven will take charge upon arrival. The warriors cheer, excited for the mission. Sven and his party are already inside the cave. He warns his team about the increased danger from stronger monsters and advises them to stay alert. Back with Cry, Liz expresses sadness at not being able to join a group. Cry explains that she will have another important task and reassures her, which lifts her mood. One warrior approaches Cray for advice, and Cray advises caution if they encounter a slime. The warrior questions this, but Cray clarifies it's just a precaution. Meanwhile, the witches discuss the situation at their hideout. One witch is concerned about the large number of warriors dispatched. Sophia, their leader, reassures them that the warriors are too arrogant to consider them a real threat. She warns, though, that she will punish anyone who interferes. Flick, another member, cautions about Cray and his ability to summon the sorrowful souls. Sophia remains confident, saying she has set up strong defenses. She reveals that only Cray, Liz, and Citri are capable of summoning the sorrowful souls, and that she has gathered intelligence on them. Sophia also explains that Liz can handle magical attacks, but Cray is vulnerable without his team. She is determined to deal with Citri and take her invention for herself, commanding all witches to follow her orders. Sten's party leaves the cave and encounters a group of warriors. One warrior mocks them, suggesting they found nothing in the cave. Sten calmly defends his belief in the importance of staying cautious and mentions that Cray has unique abilities to foresee events. Back with Cray, Liz expresses her eagerness to fight by his side, but Cray is hesitant about when to depart. Just then, Citri returns and explains that she is back because Cray needs her power. She warns of a powerful enemy and urges them to confront it before it grows stronger. Liz and Tino leave to give Cray and Citri privacy. Citri shares information about the witches, while Liz listens from outside. Meanwhile, the commander prepares to go to the Wolf Cave, but an employee questions his readiness due to his retirement. He insists he's still capable and won't let Liz mock his strength. Citri then approaches him with an important matter to discuss. The story shifts to the past, showing Citri and Cray as kids. Citri tells Cray she wants to help others by becoming a better hunter, even though she's not very strong. Cray suggests she could become an alchemist, a role where her skills could be useful. In the present, Citri stops by Cray's room before heading to see Gark. She mentions that her slime creation has improved, becoming more adaptive and evolving, though it's still a failure. Cray is confused, but Citri assures him it won't harm them. However, she doesn't mention others. Citri wonders how the slime escaped its safe, thinking it must have broken out of its capsule and fled through the bathroom drain. Cray is alarmed, fearing the slime could be dangerous, but Citri dismisses his worries and says she will handle it. Meanwhile, Cray's reinforcements arrive at the White Wolf's den. Sten, who's leading, is told by a member that Cray has assigned him to take charge. Sten isn't surprised, but he's curious why Liz isn't present. He learns Liz is with Cray on another task. Sten feels relieved, thinking the mission will go smoother without her. He calls for strategy meeting and asks if anyone has experience fighting slimes. No one does, and some members joke about slimes being easy to kill. Sen asks if they brought anything special for slimes, but they assume normal weapons will suffice. They're told this isn't a normal slime, and Sven grows annoyed that Cray didn't provide more details. Jean, one of the members, mocks everyone for worrying about his slime, but Sven tells him he'll probably be the first victim. Jean storms off angrily. The girl named Talia, an alchemist, speaks up. She surprises everyone, as they didn't know there was another alchemist besides Citri. She reveals a drug she and Citri developed to kill slimes, but she's unsure if it will work on abnormal slimes. Meanwhile, at the Akashic Tower, Noctis communicates with his disciple, who confidently discusses their strategy to defeat the hunters. Outside the White Wolf's den, Sven outlines their plan to secure the den and communicate with whistles. As the team searches, they find little of interest, but doubts about Cray's warning begin to surface. Jean mocks them for being too cautious. Later, Jean leaves to take a leak, but Sven warns him not to wander alone. Jean dismisses this, but as he's in the forest, he hears strange noises and finds a chained-up wolf knight. Two figures are about to enchant the knight with mana material, but Jean interrupts, charging in with his sword. Jean quickly defeats two shitty figures, but while he's distracted, one of them injects a wolf knight with mana material. The wolf knight morphs into a slime-like creature and breaks free. One of the shady figures smirks, saying it's now a demonized monster that needs large amounts of mana. Realizing the danger, Jean blows his whistle. Sven hears it and orders everyone to return to the labyrinth. When they arrive, they find Jean missing a hand, bloodied and shaken. Jean tells them it was a slime in the forest. The hunters spot the creature, and Talia is shocked to see a slime like this for the first time. Sven takes charge and orders mages to distract the creature, but their attacks have no effect. Meanwhile, Henrik treats Jean's injury while Jean explains that the wolf knight was turned into this monster by some strange potion. Sven shoots arrows, but the creature is unaffected. Frustrated, he wonders why the creature isn't responding to any attacks. A hunter asks what they should do next, and Sven refuses to let it roam free. As the slime attacks, Sven leads it on a chase, hoping to use a drug Talia developed that should make the slime self-destruct. However, when the slime comes into contact with the drug, it doesn't explode. Talia is stunned, and Sven grows angry, thinking this isn't really a slime. A hunter reminds him that Cray described it as slime-like, and Sven gets frustrated with Cray's lack of important details. Citri arrives and explains that the slime is encased in a magical barrier. She tells them that Cray anticipated this could happen, and she elaborates that the slime has a powerful force field. As Citri analyzes the slime, it attacks her, realizing she's absorbing mana from the area. She throws a capsule at the slime, and Sven shoots it, destroying the creature. Sen asks what she threw, and Citri reveals it was anti-mana material. Gark arrives, surprised the fight is over, and Citri explains that he gave her a lift. She then reveals that Noctis and the Akashic Tower are behind the chaos, and that they're experimenting with manipulating treasure vaults. The officials are skeptical, but Citri insists she's been hunting Noctis on her own. Talia asks about a device underground, and Citri confirms it. She warns that more monsters could be waiting and suggests questioning the mage Jean captured. The hunters feel relieved, but Citri admits she doesn't have more anti-mana material. She plans to analyze the monster to come up with a strategy. She asks for their fighting power, as she's not strong herself. After she leaves, Henrik praises her for admitting her weakness, but Sven smirks and warns Henrik that Citri will use any means necessary to achieve her goals. Meanwhile, Liz continues to pressure Cray to go to the White Wolf's den, but he refuses, as usual. Tino watches the scene unfold in embarrassment. Flick questions two mages involved in recent events, asking who ordered the repeated monster attacks. They say Sophia gave the orders, and Flick gets angry, saying she doesn't have enough experience for such decisions. He demands she be summoned, but the mages say she's inspecting their defenses and hasn't responded. Flick, frustrated, insists they need to secure their position properly. One mage explains that the master trusts Sophia fully, but Flick is determined to not lose his master's trust. He orders the release of all monsters to attack the warriors. Flick internally vows to teach Sophia a lesson in managing battles. Meanwhile, Sven interrogates two mages about creating a slime-like creature. Citri, who is with Sven, tells them they must reveal their leader's location to avoid harm. The mages refuse, saying they are loyal to their master. Citri, unimpressed, warns them that she will destroy them if necessary. One of the mages protests, saying the serum Citri wants to use is illegal and unreliable. Citri dismisses his concerns, stating the urgency of capturing the mages before they escape. Gark intervenes, suggesting a more ethical approach, but Citri drinks the vial herself, showing it's harmless. Just then, a loud explosion from the forest interrupts, and they rush to the source. They find a captive who mocks them, claiming their end is near. Citri explains that the approaching beast is protected by multiple magical barriers, and they need to find and target them. Sen observes the beast is faster than the previous one, meaning it has a different serum. Citri orders shield bearers to advance, but the beast strikes and knocks one down. The mage's spells fail to hit the beast as it dodges. Citri realizes the beast is too difficult to approach and suggests waiting for its magic to wear off. However, Gark says waiting will only cause heavy losses, so Citri orders a retreat. To everyone's surprise, the beasts start attacking each other instead. Citri explains that the beasts were fighting the hunters for mana, but now attacking each other generates even more mana. A third beast appears and joins the fight. Meanwhile, the the Master of Mages reprimands Flick for acting without Sophia's approval, blaming him for depleting all their magical potions. Flick begs for forgiveness. Sophia, over the phone, explains that she held back the beasts to avoid the consequences and criticizes Flick for his reckless actions. The Master asks about their next move, and Sophia says they need to change their strategy, noting that Gark, a 7th tier warrior, is also on the battlefield. One of the mages tells Sophia that Gark is fighting on the front lines, and Sophia confirms that although he's been retired, he's one of the greatest warriors. She adds that losing their magical potions has made the situation worse. The Master of Mages asks if they should retreat, but Sophia says they can't. She explains that retreating without achieving anything would damage the Akashic Tower's reputation. She also reminds them that 2 of their mages have been captured, and it's uncertain when they might reveal their secrets. Flick argues that the mages are loyal, but Sophia doubts their loyalty and warns that Citri will eventually find them. She suggests deploying the Beast, which she believes will help them win, retrieve the mages, and silence any traitors. The Master agrees but points out that the Beast needs someone to control it. Sophia suggests Flick take responsibility, saying it's his chance to prove himself. Flick agrees, vowing to teach the hunters a harsh lesson. Meanwhile, in the Wolf's Cave, one of Citri's students watches her and feels inadequate, thinking she'll never be as skilled as Citri. Sen notices and asks if she's upset, but she denies it. He reassures her that he's there if anything happens. Elsewhere, Gark advises Citri to rest, offering her a drink. He reflects that what they thought would be a simple investigation has turned into a battle against the Akashic Tower. He hands her the next steps, but Citri interrupts, revealing that she already found the mage's hideout. One of the captured mages is shocked and questions how she found it so fast. The captured mages protests, saying Citri's information is wrong, but Citri smirks and says their denial proves she's right. She urges them to act quickly before the Master of Mages escapes. Sen insists on capturing them, and the mages keep pleading for Sophia to release them. Citri explains that Sophia is the right hand of the Master of Mages and warns that capturing her is crucial, as she's difficult to catch. One of the mages mocks Citri, saying Sophia is too skilled for her. Citri responds confidently, vowing to capture Sophia and take full responsibility for it. Elsewhere, Liz, Cray, and Tino are traveling together. Crag reflects that he should have waited longer until everything was over. Liz urges them to hurry to prevent Citri from getting into trouble. Crag complains about not having safety rings and is frustrated. Tino points out that the Wolf's Cave is nearby, but Cry can't see it. Tino suggests holding his hand to guide him, but Liz suddenly yells at her, making Tino retreat behind Cry. Cry uses his vision ring to see, and Liz reassures him that she'll protect him. Meanwhile, Citri, Sven, and Gark arrive at the mage's hideout. Citri confidently says she knew they'd be here and insists they must move in. Sven comments that Citri is always asking for the impossible. Gark, however, claims that nothing is impossible for him and declares he will prove it to Liz. Cray notices something odd and points it out. Liz examines the area and identifies it as the remains of a lightning strike. Gark joins the warriors in the battle against the monsters, while Sven tries to help from a distance but fails. The leader of the mages summons a powerful creature, Akashic, which arrives with a huge explosion. Akashic targets Gark, but he blocks the attack, alarming Sven. The mages shoot arrows at Sven, but he dodges them. One adventurer suggests retreating, but Sven's healer disagrees, fearing it would harm civilians. Flick works to free himself and his companions. During the battle, a monster attacks Sven, injuring his hand, but he heals quickly. Cray's apprentice suggests shooting down one of the flying monsters to change the battle. Before they can act, Liz appears and takes down one of the flying monsters with one strike. Sten reveals that Master Cray sent reinforcements, giving the group new hope. The captured mages break free and join the fight. Cray and Tino watch from a distance. Cray is distracted, thinking Liz should be protecting him. Tino suggests capturing someone nearby, but Cray refuses, wanting to preserve peace. Flick grows suspicious of Cray's knowledge of their presence. On the battlefield, the warriors focus on Akashic, but doesn't weaken. Liz takes down more flying monsters and then attacks Akashic, but her strikes don't work. Gark strikes Akashic, causing it to kneel, but it rises again. Akashic counters by attacking Gark, who dodges. Akashic ascends into the air, revealing it can fly. Akashic then attacks Liz, wounding her. Sen asks if they have a weapon to counter it, but Citri says defeating it will take time and patience. Liz appears and declares she will handle it. She strikes Akashic and forces it down. Gark follows up with a blow, but Akashic stabilizes. Liz admits she underestimated the fight, but says its time is up. Cray arrives, greeting Sven and Liz. Akashic lunges at Cray, but Tino shields him. A mysterious force repels Akashic into a building, ending the battle. Liz praises Cray for stopping the creature and tells Tino to step back. Cray, confused by the situation, asks Tino what happened. Meanwhile, the agents of justice start investigating the mage's abandoned equipment. Gark talks to Sven and questions how Cray defeated Akashic, wondering if magic was involved. Scene explains that Cray says the monster reverted to to its original state. Gark focuses on capturing the mage's tools. Citri thanks Cray for arriving at the right time and acknowledges his help. Cray says the real enemy is not the creature with the mages. Citri clarifies that the true enemy is the Akashic and refuses Cray's offer to help, deciding to handle it herself. She silently vows to defeat them. Meanwhile, the mage leader wonders if Sophia is with the Thousand Tricks team and if they are watching her. Flick confirms Sophia is likely there. The leader is frustrated that the Thousand Tricks found the mage's hideout but haven't captured them. He decides to leave the country and return later. He orders Sophia to be summoned. While searching for slimes, Gark confronts Cray, accusing him of withholding information. Cray calmly says he has only shared what he knows. An official criticizes Cray for not helping with the investigation. Cray suggests they question Citri instead. At the mage's hideout, the leader mistakes a red-haired girl, Talia, for Sophia. Talia denies being Sophia, and the leader grows angry. Sophia arrives and apologizes for being late. She explains that she was finishing tasks. The leader is confused by her doppelganger. Citri reveals that she has been both Citri and Sophia all along. The mage leader is shocked. Citri explains she has been an eager student under the leader and admits to building the ethereal tower and Akashic. She warns the mages to retreat, saying that Cray allowed their survival as a warning. The leader asks if Cray knew, but Citri denies it. Citri explains that Akashic was stopped on purpose to avoid further destruction, as the fighting would have caused too much damage. She tells the mages that the agents of justice have already taken their research and equipment, making them vulnerable to arrest. Despite this, she plans to continue her research. The mage leader mocks Citri, calling her delusional and the Dark One, a name that bothers Citri due to her past failures. She turns to Talia and admits how easy it is to mimic her appearance, but doesn't share more details. Talia, overwhelmed, starts to cry. Citri coldly says Sophia no longer exists and suggests the mage leader should take the name. Enraged, the mage leader tries to attack, but Citri uses a monster to shield herself. She explains that monsters respond to love and care, ensuring control. This angers the mage leader and Flick, with the monster even turning hostile toward Flick. The mage leader attacks again, destroying the monster, but Citri remains unharmed. She reveals she is immune because she has Citri slime inside her, which absorbs magic to make her stronger. The mage leader warns this could destroy the world, but Citri plans to test it. As smoke fills the area, Flick urges the mage leader to leave and promises to handle the situation. The mage leader flees, leaving his team to fight. Citri questions Flick's loyalty to the mage leader, making him feel conflicted. One mage says they respect their leader no matter what. The mage leader tries to flee, but is stopped by a powerful strike. A massive figure emerges and the leader attacks it with fire magic, but it's unaffected. Citri explains that Chimera has helped her reach her goals. She introduces Kill, a monster she created using an imprisoned mage. The mage leader is furious, but Kill attacks him. Meanwhile, Cry talks to Citri, who confirms no one was seriously harmed except Talia, who fainted. Citri plans to auction the seized materials and suggests they could acquire Akashic through negotiations. Cry agrees to look into it. Citri also reveals her longtime nemesis has disappeared. Justice Warriors, along with Commander Gark, Cry, and Citri, meet to discuss important matters. Cry asks for permission to keep the beast, which Citri had suggested. One of the Justice Warriors questions why Cry wants the creature and what he plans to do with it. To everyone's surprise, Cry casually says he plans to drink from it. The room falls silent, and Cry laughs at their reactions. After the meeting, Cry and Citri leave together. Citri thanks Cry for supporting her idea, but Cry admits he hasn't secured the creature yet. Citri laughs at the situation and is amused by Cray's joke about drinking from it. Cry explains it's an old joke he enjoys. They part ways and Cry heads off, but Gark calls him back for a private conversation. In a secluded spot, Gark tells Cray about a new arrival in town, Arnold, a 7th level fighter and dragon slayer. Cry doesn't care about the news, but Gark warns him not to fight Arnold. Gark taps Cry on the shoulder, which activates Cray's protective ring, reminding Cray of his physical fragility. Gark leaves and Cray reflects on their conversation. Later, Cray sees a poster about an annual city auction featuring rare treasures. Realizing he doesn't have enough money to participate, Cray considers borrowing some but hesitates, remembering he still owes Citri money. A guild worker named Chloe approaches Cray, introducing herself as Gark's niece. She mentions Arnold's strength and praises him. While they talk, Citri arrives to fetch Cray, thanking him for waiting. The two walk outside and unexpectedly run into Arnold. Neither Cray nor Citri recognizes him at first, but Chloe greets Arnold warmly inside the guild hall. Some team members get irritated by the attention Arnold is getting. Later, Cry returns home with Citri, her deputy, and the creature they retrieved. The deputy expresses concern about the creature's safety, but Citri reassures her. However, the creature leaps onto Cray, draining all his mana. Citri quickly takes the creature away, scolding it, while Cry checks his hands and realizes he has no mana left. Exhausted, Cry vows to avoid the creature in the future and figure out how to recharge his mana. Cry asks about Lucia's return, eager to see her again. Citri says it might take longer due to an incident involving a sword-wielding monster. Cry asks if the monster caused Luke to get sick again, and Citri confirms that it did. Cry hopes Lucia will return soon. Citri then gives Cry a magical ring, and Cry asks about it. Citri downplays its significance, urging him to wear it without worrying too much. Meanwhile, Arnold and his team, frustrated with being overlooked, discuss ways to get more recognition. Arnold crushes an apple apple in his hand to show his readiness for action. Back at Cray's place, Citri gives him a massage to help him relax. Cray admits it feels good, but his mana is still an issue. He's too shy to ask anyone for help and has always relied on Lucia. Citri reassures him and assembles a group of warriors for advanced training in spells and enchantments. She tells them the training is non-lethal and that mastering it will allow them to fight alongside Lucia. The warriors get excited, especially when one asks if the training could make him as strong as Lucia. Citri asks for volunteers, and to her surprise, twin elves named Lapis and Chris step forward. They are from the Starlight faction, and Chris is sarcastic about Cray's welcome. Lapis reminds her sister to show respect to Cray, as he is a human clan leader. Chris expresses disbelief at Cray as Lucia's older brother. Cray introduces the elves, mentioning their magical abilities and their dislike for humans with lesser magic. Lapis comments on how extraordinary Lucia's magic is, seeming almost impossible to match. Citri explains that Lucia gained her abilities through this training. Marietta volunteers for the training and starts charging a ring with her mana. She manages to charge 3 rings but collapses after attempting a 4th. Citri uses this moment to explain the dangers of overusing mana and how the training helps expand mana capacity. Lapis compares it to an extreme recovery process, and Citri reveals a serum to help Marietta regain strength. However, Marietta collapses again, and Citri encourages the group to keep practicing. Cray wonders if Lucia went through this kind of tough training. Citri explains that Lucia's strength comes from hard work and increased mana capacity, and that Lucia never complains. She tells the Starlight team that Lucia turns down the recruitment offers because she isn't impressed by them. Chris gets upset, but Lapis calms her down and suggests proving their worth through action. Chris demands all of Citri's charging items, and Citri's beast places them on the table. Cray looks on as Citri assures him everything will be ready soon. Meanwhile, Rodden is at a friend's house discussing a deal. When Liz arrives, she catches Rodden's attention. At Liz's house, Citri and Cray wait outside. Tino greets them and tells them Liz will be out soon. Inside, Liz emerges from the bath, and Citri quickly covers Cray's eyes. Once dressed, Liz thanks Cray for wanting to host a party to celebrate her and Citri's return. Citri prevents a hug between Cray and Liz but agrees to the celebration. Arnold's team, frustrated by their lack of recognition, decides to drink. At the party, Citri secretly adds a serum to Liz's drink to weaken her. Liz notices and confronts Citri, but Cray steps in and Citri adds another dose of serum. Liz, unaware, drinks and challenges Citri to do the same. Citri accepts, but Cray switches their drinks. Liz strikes Arnold after he insults her, and Cray quickly apologizes to Arnold, leading everyone out before things escalate. At the tavern, Chloe reflects on her dreams of becoming an adventurer and remembers a duel with Luke, a skilled swordsman. Despite her efforts, she was defeated. Luke praised her strength but explained that his victory came from intense training. This made Chloe give up on adventuring and focus on helping adventurers at the guild instead. Meanwhile, Cray and his deputy talk about Arnold, a warrior injured by Liz. Cray mentions Arnold's dragon-slaying reputation and recalls a time when Citri cooked dragon meat, which surprises his deputy. Arnold and his team, still upset, discuss how to handle their defeat. Arnold acknowledges Liz's strength, but his team wants to take action. Arnold just wants to know Liz's name. At the guild, Chloe, remaining professional, asks if they plan to file a formal complaint. One teammate refuses, but Arnold stays calm and asks for Liz's name. Gark, the guild manager, shows up and reveals her name. He teases Arnold's team about their defeat and suggests they bring Cray a peace offering of dragon meat. Arnold's team gets angry, but Gark dismisses it, warning them to focus their energy elsewhere. Arnold decides to target Cray. At Cray's house, his deputy asks about his debt to Citri. Cray admits he owes a lot and has 3 ways to repay it. The first is to imprison Citri alongside her sister, but Cray says it's impractical. The second is marriage, which would clear the debt. The third is a standard repayment plan. Cray jokes about marriage solving his problems, but his deputy is annoyed and advises him to manage his finances better. She also suggests finding a treasure to help. Cray considers attending an auction for valuable items but feels overwhelmed by his debt. In the city, rumors spread about Cray's rise to the 2nd rank, with some even claiming he can predict the future. Arnold's team hears these stories and gets curious. Tino tells them that Cray seems to know everything. Arnold's team talks about Cray's strength, but Arnold dismisses it, believing his own rank is earned through effort. Arnold vows to challenge Cray. Meanwhile, Cray's debt grows 10 times its original amount. He considers his deputy's repayment plan but finds it too much. Tino offers to help and expresses frustration at being tricked. Cray jokes that the debt could be solved by marrying Citri, but Tino warns that Citri would dominate him. Cray laughs it off and suggests they go out for sweets. Tino talks about the auction again, suggesting they need treasure to pay the debt. Cray groans, feeling like her ideas are pushing him toward danger. Cray regrets borrowing from Citri, wondering how things might have been if he hadn't taken the loans. Arnold gets angry when Cray shows him an artifact glowing with runes. Arnold mocks Cray, accusing him of hiding behind tools instead of fighting like a true warrior. Cray calmly responds that he doesn't need to risk fighting directly when he has the artifact, as efficiency is more important. Arnold's team, already upset, gets ready to attack. Tino, who was slammed to the ground, groans and says she's still able to fight, but Cray tells her to rest, focusing on Arnold instead. Cray activates the artifact, and a wave of energy surrounds the street, paralyzing Arnold's team. Arnold struggles but can't move easily, asking what is happening. Cray explains that the artifact doesn't harm anyone but simply suppresses aggression like a timeout for overly eager warriors. The onlookers who had gathered to watch are amazed by Kray's control. Arnold's teammates try to break free but fail. One teammate growls that Cry is nothing without his tricks. Cry chuckles and says that tricks, when used well, are better than brute force. He tells Arnold that not all battles are won with fists and swords. Arnold, frustrated, pushes through the artifact's power with his willpower and steps forward, saying the artifact won't stop him. Cry increases the pressure and Arnold falls to his knees, struggling to breathe. Cry admits Arnold is strong but says that strength alone isn't enough. Arnold accuses Cray of hiding behind tools and others' power. Cry explains that true strength is knowing when to fight and when not to. Satisfied with this lesson, Cray deactivates the artifact, releasing Arnold's team. Tino, now back on her feet, asks why Cray didn't let her finish them off. Cry says that sometimes showing restraint is the real victory. Arnold, still kneeling, glares at Cry, but says nothing before leaving with his team. Cray watches them go and mutters that it's never over. Tino comments that Cry could have ended it, but chose not to. Cry replies that winning isn't always about defeating the enemy, but about teaching them something they won't forget. He then suggests they go to the sweet shop. Tino follows, still frustrated but admiring Cray's leadership. At the sweet shop, Tino apologizes again, feeling guilty for not being strong enough. Cry reassures her that strength isn't just about winning but knowing when to stand and when to step back. Tino insists on doing more to prove she's worthy of being on his team and asks for a mission or treasure to help repay his debts. Cry sees her determination and assures her that her time will come, but for now, they should take things one step at a time. Later that evening, Cry walks alone, reflecting on the day's events. He thinks about Chloe, the guild attendant, and her untapped potential. He recalls her duel with Luke where she failed, leading her to give up adventuring. Cry considers recruiting her for his team but hesitates because of Gark, the guild manager, who is protective of Chloe. Cry believes Chloe has more to offer, but he's unsure about causing conflict. Meanwhile, Chloe works late at the guild, still haunted by the duel and her decision to assist adventurers. She resolves to push herself harder, hoping that excelling in her role could help her understand her true potential. Chloe tells Arnold that Cry has no interest in dragon meat and canceled his request to capture a dragon, saying chicken meat is tastier. This frustrates Arnold and his team. She also shares Cray's comment about Arnold's fondness for women, which embarrasses her and humiliates Arnold. Later, Arnold and his team talk about Cray. Just then, Citri enters and reveals she has raised 800 million, money she had saved for her marriage. Cray and his deputy are shocked. Citri says the money is now Cray's to use, but the deputy warns of the risks of financial and emotional conflicts. Cray dismisses her concerns. Citri says she accepts him no matter his situation, and Cray agrees to a new plan. Citri suggests investigating the wealthy woman, Eclair, who wants the artifact, to find a way to stop her bid. At Eclair's home, she greets them warmly, but warns them not to undermine Rodin. She plans to gift the artifact to Rodin, even if it's dangerous. Cray disagrees, saying Rodin would never accept such a dangerous artifact. Eclair gets emotional, but Citri points out that Eclair's 100 million budget is limited. Eclair refuses to concede. Meanwhile, Eclair's father is furious and orders her to secure the artifact at any cost, even if it means going to massive debt. Eclair argues that Cray's brew can only raise 200 million, but the advisor warns her to secure 1 billion to guarantee victory. Cray reflects on the ridiculousness of the situation and jokes about throwing a celebration funded by Rodin once it's over. Citri tells Cray that they have about 95 million, making their chances of winning the artifact only 70%. She adds that if he hadn't objected earlier, she might have found other ways to get it. Cray thanks her for her hard work, and Citri, feeling emotional, wishes she could rest her head on his shoulder. Liz, pulling Cray closer, warns him that if he doesn't win, she might steal the artifact. Citri disagrees and suggests framing it as the work of thieves instead. Cray decides that if he fails, he will let the artifact go forever. At the auction, Liz is shocked by the large crowd. Cray explains they are all there for the auction, and Tino, with her old team, greets him. She says she came alone, but will watch and win. A burly warrior approaches, smirking at Cray's mounting debts. Cray smiles and admits that it might be true. Cray asks Tino why she's alone, and she says no one invited her, so he offers for her to stay by his side. Cray realizes the crowd's attention is growing and asks Tino to bid for him during the auction. Tino agrees, and Cray assures everyone that it will work out. Liz looks uneasy, and Cray tells her to stop showing disapproval. Liz warns Tino that she must win or face consequences. Cray privately thinks if Tino fails, it will be his fault for instructing her. Eclair arrives, glares at Cray, and walks away. Citri says Eclair is prepared to outbid them, but Cray reassures her. Inside the auction hall, Cray focuses on the artifact. Liz wonders when it will be presented, and Cray explains it will be at the end. He wishes he could bid on other items but can't afford to. During the auction, Cray is tempted by other items like a sword, a cloak, boots, and a crystal, but he resists, knowing he must save his money for the artifact. Cray decides it's time to act and jokes about his talent for borrowing money. The next item revealed is a humanoid created by Citri, which makes her sad because it's something she created. Cray asks her about it, and Citri explains that they can't afford to buy it and still get the artifact he wants. She admits it holds sentimental value for her. Cray signals Tino to bid on the humanoid, and the price rises quickly. Citri warns him they won't have enough money left for the artifact, but Cray insists it's the best use of their funds. The price climbs to 500 million, and Liz worries about exceeding their budget. Finally, they can't afford it, and the humanoid is sold for much more than they could pay. Cry hands Citri a check to cover the difference, and she promises to repay it soon. Cry reflects on how ironic it is that he's using his sister's money to help a childhood friend. At the auction, Greg wins the humanoid instead of Tino, and Cray isn't upset because he trusts Greg. The red-haired warrior mocks Cray for spending all of his money, but Cray doesn't care as he's only there for the humanoid. He decides to head home, leaving Citri and Liz to handle it. On the way, Cray remembers Eclair's plan to give the artifact to Rodin, so he goes to warn Rodin about the danger of the artifact. Cray asks Rodin to stop Eclair from getting it. Rodin agrees to leave immediately. Meanwhile, Eclair reflects on winning the artifact. She wonders if Cray let her win on purpose. She feels overwhelmed and starts to cry. The artifact, called the Face, suddenly speaks to her, saying it has been watching her and knows she needs its strength. It then attacks her. Eclair remembers Cray's warning about the masked danger while her father speaks with Rodin. He confirms that Eclair bought the mask for Rodin's sake and asks if Rodin believes she can gain strength from it. Eclair has locked herself in her room since the auction. When a loud explosion occurs, Rodin and Eclair's father rush to find Eclair holding a guard and furious. She explains the mask gives her power, but when Rodin asks her to take it off, she realizes she can't. She becomes suspicious of Rodin's weapon, and her transformation continues. Rodin remembers Cray's warning about weapons and prepares for battle to remove the mask without harming Eclair. Meanwhile, Arnold and his team celebrate their profit from selling the mask. When they return home, Citri and Liz confront them. Citri offers an antidote for 110 million after revealing that the drinks they consumed were poisoned. Arnold's teammates begin to collapse from the poison, and Arnold gets angry. Cry later apologizes to Rodin for the chaos and explains he planned a celebration. He asks Rodin if he has the mask. Rodin hands it over and Cry is thrilled. Rodin warns him about the mask's unpredictability. As Cry examines it, the mask speaks and evaluates his abilities, deeming him unworthy and dropping to the ground. Cry wonders if it's truly the legendary mask he sought. He asks Eclair if he should keep it, and she admits it was a mistake to pursue it. Cry thanks her and invites her for cake. Afterward, Cry reflects on the mask's reaction to Eclair, realizing she may be stronger than him. This makes him consider stepping away from everything.